Welcome back to Breakdown SEC versus the Big Ten, where we evaluate the continuing efforts of the Big Ten and SEC as they struggle to climb to the top of the ladder and become and/or remain the alpha dog conference of the collegiate sports world. I'm Joe McClure, and with me is
Joe McClure II.
All right, today is Wednesday, May 5th. We're going to talk about the NFL draft, which just concluded over the weekend. And to begin with, JJ, the draft is over. Can you talk about the historic viewership of the first round of the NBA drafts?
Well, the NBA draft would be fortunate to have that viewership. The NFL draft, though, did have its second highest rated performance of all time this past year. They had 12.6 million viewers. It was simulcast across 3 different networks. 6.5 million people watched on ESPN. 4.2 million people watched it on ABC. And 1.9 million people watched it on NFL Network.
How does that compare to baseball or basketball or soccer or whatever?
Well, those games are very rarely simulcast, so it's hard to parse that one out specifically. But I do know that all of those numbers were higher than any 2020 NBA Finals game, 5 of the 6 World Series baseball games. The ratings also eclipsed the 2021 Oscars.
Impressive. Okay, before we dig into this year's draft, I just want to mention some draft bust, some players who turn out not to be what they thought they were going to be. So historically, can you tell me about some draft bust?
Well, I think the biggest everyone likes to bring up all the time is Ryan Leaf, just because of who he was partnered with. The pick right in front of him, Peyton Manning, obviously went on to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Ryan Leaf was the second pick in the 1998 draft.
That he was out of Washington State. He went to the San Diego Chargers and had a not particularly illustrious career. We'll just say it like that.
Just to add something to it, San Diego originally had the 3rd pick in that draft. They traded with Arizona, traded up to get the 2nd pick. And for that to move from the 3rd to the 2nd pick, they gave away 1 future first-round pick, and they gave away 3-time Pro Bowler Eric Metcalf to get Ryan Leaf.
That makes the Mitchell Trubisky trade look a little bit better, I guess.
Ryan Leaf signed a 4-year contract worth $31.25 million.
31.25?
$31.25 million with $11.25 guaranteed signing bonus. Okay, let's talk about the bust in the SEC and the Big Ten.
Well, in the Big Ten, the bust starts and ends with Tony Mandarich, the incredible bulk out of Michigan State.
I remember him well. He was a great collegiate player. It turned out, though, that once he was drafted by Green Bay, he didn't perform as well. And that would have been because of steroids.
Well, allegedly. And in the SEC, I say that the bus starts and ends with Jamarcus Russell. But I don't want to overlook Johnny Manziel. I think his career was a pretty... I was thinking of the nice way of saying dumpster fire, but it was a pretty bad experience for him as well.
Well, let me just tell you a few things about Jamarcus Trinell Russell. Played at LSU. He was the MVP of the 2007 Sugar Bowl, where LSU defeated Notre Dame 41-14. Jamarcus Russell was the first overall pick in 2007 by the then Oakland Raiders. They're now in Las Vegas. He played for 3 years. He held out after he was drafted and didn't get to camp until September the 12th. On September the 12th, he signed a contract worth $68 million. with 31.5 million guaranteed. Uh, During his last season in 2009, among all qualifying quarterbacks, Jamarcus Russell had the lowest quarterback rating, the lowest completion percentage, the fewest passing touchdown, the fewest passing yards. Uh, his overall statistic for his 3 years, it was a 52% completion rate. His touchdown to interception was 18 to 23, and his passer rating was 65. In March of 2010, he arrived at minicamp weighing 290 pounds. By April of 2010, he was weighing 300 pounds. On May 6th, the Raiders released him, and the next day he became a free agent. And he pocketed a whole lot of money. So those were some busts. But this year's draft, hopefully there will be no bust, and we're going to get right into it and start analyzing this draft. JJ, I want you to pick a few players, including undrafted free agents, and talk about those players for a minute.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of different players to talk about. I think the number one player I'm going to talk about. Well, the player I want to talk about isn't the. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. The first player I want to talk about isn't from the Big Ten or the SEC. It's my favorite player from North Dakota State by way of Minnesota. Trey Lance. He, I think, is cut out to have a very good career just by virtue of the team that he went to. I think going to a Kyle Shanahan one-cut run-first offense will be beneficial to a quarterback like Trey Lance, who needs to work on his accuracy and develop his pocket presence as an NFL quarterback. I think he went to the exact perfect teacher to mold that. And speaking of Trey's, we can transition over to the Big Ten by speaking about his teammate, Trey Sermon, who went in the third round.
Running back.
Yeah, he, I think, fits Shanahan's system incredibly well. If Trey Lance is the RG3 for that system, then Trey Sermon can very much be the Alfred Morris who made the Pro Bowl in his rookie year.
Okay, and just to add, Trey Sermon played at Ohio State.
Yes, he did play at Ohio State. And
any other players you want to talk about?
I think some good fits include Kwity Paye going to the Colts. The Colts have a very good defense. They just need a little bit more edge rush, and I think that's a good fit. I think Greg Newsome going to the Browns is kind of the reverse of that.
Okay, let's mention the school that all of these guys came from.
Well, Kwity Paye went to Michigan. Greg Newsome went to Northwestern. And I think he's a great fit with the Browns secondary. They just need one more cover corner and one more edge rusher, honestly. But I think that was a perfect fit. I believe Jalen Waddle reuniting with his teammate from Alabama, playing for Miami, will be good. Will benefit Tua's career.
Reuniting with his teammate, the quarterback. Is that what you're talking about? Tua.
Yep, that Tua.
Okay, just wanted to mention the name. That's also true, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's also true for Cincinnati quarterback and receiver. In the Cincinnati previous year they drafted Joe Burrow, and this year they drafted the wide receiver from LSU, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, there was a theme of the draft, reuniting old former teammates. Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne did it in Jacksonville as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good fits, but those would be the ones.
Did you want to mention any undrafted free agents? Is there any that stand out or stick out in your mind?
I think the two that stick out most vividly for me would be Shakur Brown from Michigan State.
Cornerback.
Yeah, he is a cornerback. Him going to the Steelers, and then Dylan Moses from Alabama going to the Jags. I think.
Moses from what school?
From Alabama.
Okay.
But I think his injury history was the reason he didn't get drafted. That the medicals were an issue. There was not an NFL combine, which is where all the teams bring all of their doctors and congregate in one building at one time, and you can get all of the medicals and you can see where all the players are at any given time. Without that luxury, I think guys with risky medical histories fell down draft boards and sometimes right out of the draft. And I think that's what happened with Dylan Moses.
Let me bring up another undrafted guy that you mentioned in our last program, quarterback Jamie Newman, basically from Georgia, but never played at Georgia. He signed a free agent contract with Philadelphia Eagles. Prior to the season, he was thought of as a first-round pick, and he ended up not getting picked because he opted out. What do you think his chances are with Philadelphia? Philadelphia quarterbacks right now is Jalen Hurd, and I forget who their backup quarterback is.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I know at one point in time it was a Sudfeld. I believe Nate Sudfeld was their backup, but I'm not entirely sure if he's still their backup. I don't know. Philadelphia has been in the news lately just for how horrible their organization has been run, and it's still up in the air. Like I don't know anything about their new coach, so I'm not entirely sure how that system is going to fit. But I think that's a quarterback room that he could compete with, because if it is Nate Sudfeld, I don't know anything of. I've seen enough of him in college, and I've seen him play. I've seen him play in the NFL enough to know that he isn't a starter. And Jalen Hurts, he played 4 games. He had one really good game, one really bad game. I don't know how good of a quarterback he is, but he hasn't cemented himself as a Hall of Famer. So Jamie Newman absolutely could overtake Jalen Hurts. It's possible. I mean, I wouldn't. If I was Jamie Newman, I would consider signing with an organization such as Philadelphia as well.
Okay. You mentioned some Philadelphia Eagles been in the news. Would you like to care to elaborate on to at least one item?
No. Well, okay. There's a humongous cardboard cutout of Carson Wentz that their owner had until they cut him. I know that. But I don't know. It's all in. You can.
Okay.
It's.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the NFL draft. Once again, JJ, Alabama and the SEC flexed their muscles. For the 15th straight year, the SEC won the NFL draft. This year with 65 players being picked. That's a new record. Last year they had 64 players picked. This year they got 65. The SEC led the way in first round picks with 12. The record is 15 set by the SEC last year. The Big Ten was second this year with 7 first round picks. Any thoughts on the first round picks, SEC and Big Ten?
Any thoughts on them? I think I have a lot of thoughts on them. I think Alabama had three players picked in the top 10, 4 players picked in the top 15, and 5 players picked in the top 20. That was mighty impressive.
When you combine first round picks, SEC and Big Ten, there is 22, 21.
19?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes, 19, I'm sorry. 19 of the 32 picks.
Yeah.
How incredible is that?
It's significant, but I don't know. I think owners and GMs and scouts had the least amount of data to access in a long time. So I think they just relied on obviously tape from last year and big name, big time programs out of the SEC in particular, and to a lesser extent the Big Ten.
That's a very good point that you make. I agree. Just getting away from the Big Ten Big Ten and the SEC for a quick minute, were you surprised that the Big 12 had 0 first round picks?
Yeah, I mean, that was incredibly surprising. I'm used to them having, first overall picks at quarterback with Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield and all these other guys out of Oklahoma. To see no one from Oklahoma specifically not get drafted in the first round was kind of surprising. But then again, Oklahoma is usually in the college playoff, and they weren't this year. So I guess the NFL draft just reflects the season that they had.
Of the SEC's 12 first-round pick, Alabama had 6 of them. Alabama has had a player selected in the first round for 13 straight years. To me, that seems amazing. Can you touch on that at all? About Alabama dominance.
I think it's another feather in the cap for the greatest college football coach of all time. The pride and joy of West Virginia. No disrespect to Bob Huggins, but the best coach from the state of West Virginia is Nick Saban. And I think his record of getting players drafted in the first round is just another feather in his cap to indicate that.
Okay. Alabama, 13 straight years. Okay, the SEC also led the way in the second round with 10 picks. The Big Ten was tied for third with 4, and the ACC had 5 picks. SEC is really flexing their muscles in the first 2 rounds. Should they rename the NFL draft the SEC Invitation?
I suppose if they want to. The SEC certainly has no issue of getting their players drafted.
Okay, well, the total picks, there were 259 players picked. The SEC and Big Ten combined for 109 of those picks. That's 42% of the total players picked.
Yeah.
How impressive is that?
It's impressive, but it's not. It's more impressive to see how the players will end up producing, I guess.
Okay.
Getting drafted isn't the finish line for me. It's like the starting point.
Well stated. I agree with that. But I do want to say, I'm going to go on to my next point. And my next question basically is, given that the SEC had been pretty dominant, my question to you is, what role, if any, can you scheme from? Can you gather from the 2020 census numbers in relation to the conference's draft performance? Is there any correlation to the U.S. Census and the draft performance in your mind at all?
Probably. I think it's like a bit of a microcosm. I think the draft reflects the migration of people out of the Midwest. New York, California, and Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Ohio all lost one representative in the Electoral College. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio have 4 of the 6 best programs in the Big Ten. So I think that in some ways it's reflective of that migration to the South and the West. But I also think that the NFL draft is one of the most inexact sciences, more so even than the NBA draft. I think a lot of times, people don't draft the right guy.
That's true.
So, and I think with SEC being so dominant as it pertains to winning national championships, I think a lot of scouts and general managers default to the conference strength and draft players that they normally wouldn't draft because of that affiliation in that respect that conference gets.
That's a good point, and it's probably true. But I just want to. I do think that there's a correlation, and I'll say when I first migrated from Arkansas to Michigan back in '79, Michigan had, I believe, 18 seats in the House of Representatives. With the new census, they're going to have three.
They're going to have more than
I'm
three.
sorry. I'm sorry. They're going to have 13 with the new census. So they went from 18 to 13. I look at the states that are losing seats this year. They're all Big Ten states. Michigan, two Big Ten schools. Pennsylvania, a Big Ten school. Illinois is a Big Ten school. Ohio is even losing seat. The ones gaining, Texas and Florida are two that's gaining. Texas gaining two. When I first moved to Michigan, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, Pac-10 at that time, I don't know, it was the Pac-10 or Pac-8. Anyway, they were kind of like the kings of the football world. The SEC has just blown them away. And like I say, 15 straight years the SEC has won the draft. What?
I don't want to get too like political or anything, but when you came up here from Arkansas, you were 14 years. As a nation, we were 14 years removed from the Civil Rights Act.
Okay.
There weren't the opportunities for black football players in the 60s that there are now, and a lot of SEC schools are making up for lost times in that respect. There are a lot more people migrating back to the South. Look at the Ole Miss Black Bears. In 2009, they were the Ole Miss Rebels. There's a reason their mascot changed.
Okay.
They don't want to alienate black players and other elite athletes who aren't black, who don't want to align themselves with that. And that's why I think they've reached out to black players, and desegregation is far enough in the rear view that teams aren't going to go to a Michigan over a Florida anymore just because Ann Arbor might treat the player a little bit nicer than Gainesville does.
You know what? I think you make a perfect point, and I agree with you 100%. Tough question. This is my question. What can other conferences do to slow down the SEC draft day freight train? Because it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling.
Well, the Pac-12 has to actually start caring about football. The West Coast, they have a lot of things to care about, and football does not seem to be a priority. But until they start actually prioritizing that and caring about it, I don't think the Pac-12 really has an opportunity. Now, the ACC and the Big 12 do have opportunity because most of their schools are in the South, in places that are gaining population. The problem with the Big 12 is that they are heliocentric with Texas, and they can't really just cater to every single one of Texas's whims. But they also need Texas to stay in the conference, because without Texas in the conference, they're basically the Big East. They're Oklahoma in the Big East. So it's just not. They have issues, identity issues, but they have the population and they care about football as much as people in the SEC do in the Big 12. So they have the opportunity to really strike, but they have to become a balanced conference.
Okay. So you mentioned the Pac-12, you mentioned the Big 12, ACC and the Big 10. What can they do to pick themselves up higher?
Well, the Big 10 doesn't carry itself the same way that the SEC does. The SEC is all about results. They're all about winning over everything and getting those results. The Big 10 wants to win and be told that it's doing so in the classiest of manner.
Okay.
They want to champion their academic prowess, and they want to do all of these things. They want to be a Renaissance conference. They don't want to be like a one-track conference the way SEC has. Like, the SEC is very much a sports conference. It's not just one sport. It's women's basketball, it's women's softball, it's men's baseball, it's men's football. It's a lot of different sports. But you can tell that their focus is on sports. In the Big Ten, they're the only sports conference in the Power Five that's part of the where every member was part of the academic allegiance of colleges or whatever. That's what it was before Nebraska. They invited Nebraska. I don't think Nebraska is. I know Maryland and Rutgers are two, but I think Nebraska is the one team. There's the one school that keeps them from completely being able to say that now. But they're a scholastic and academic conference.
JJ, I want to say you have made some outstanding points today, and I agree with you. I'm going to ask you another tough question. You mentioned the SEC and their desire to win. Is it me? Am I thinking not clear? But LSU just hired a women basketball coach. I'm sorry, Baylor.
No, LSU hired the women's coach from Baylor.
That's right.
Kim Mulcahy.
That's right. And this is going to go to the Big 12. To replace Baylor's coach, Baylor hired a WNBA coach. So this lady, and I apologize for not knowing her name, but she says, rather than coach in the professional league, it's better for me if I coach at the collegiate level. And to me, that's a major job. You oftentimes see people leaving collegiate levels, going to the professional levels, but maybe in Texas and this Baylor is not a SEC school, but maybe in Texas, they are all about winning, as you stated earlier, about the SEC.
Well, the state of Texas absolutely is. I mean, Baylor has won 3 women's championships, and they are the reigning men's champion in basketball. Texas just hired Chris Beard, and they put together like the best college basketball assistant staff in the nation, and they're just on a warpath right now. I think they're prioritizing winning in Texas just like they do in the SEC as well. But I think the whole a women's coach leaving the WNBA for the college ranks, I think in every other revenue sport in college that would be more impressive because there's only 5 of those. Baseball, men's basketball, women's basketball, football, and I think hockey. Those are the only ones. But the WNBA doesn't make the money. They don't pay out the money that the NBA pays out, that Major League Baseball pays out, that the NFL pays out, or that the NHL pays out even. So I think that might be why people might be willing to leave the WNBA for college. And also, women's basketball players are at their highest profile while they're in college. I think that might be true for women's coaches as well. I think that there's more attention paid to college women's basketball than even professional women's basketball.
Very interesting. Interesting. Okay. Before JJ, I asked you about next year's draft. Is there anything else you want to say about this year's NFL draft?
No, I just think that Alabama had 10 draft picks, Ohio State had 10, Georgia had 9, Florida had 8, and Michigan had 8. And those were 5 of the top 6 teams. The only other program not mentioned that wasn't an SEC or Big Ten program was Notre Dame, and they're in Big Ten country. I just think, those are the programs that I would expect to also have these type of draft picks in the future. And I also want to make a note that Michigan State's 80-year history of having at least one player drafted came to an end in the 2021 draft.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot that. There were 2 schools that did not have a player picked in the draft, Michigan State and
another Big Ten school.
Was it Rutgers?
That sounds right, but
I'm sure it was Michigan State and Rutgers who did not get a player picked. But yeah, that record that Michigan State had, amazing. I'm glad you brought that up. It was how many years? 80?
80.
80 consecutive years with a player being drafted. I think the only two other schools could make that come in, USC and someone else, and I can't remember who they were.
Yeah, they were on a tier with two other schools when their record came to an end. But yeah, 4 score is a long time to go.
Indeed. Well, okay. Well, this draft is in the books. Next year, who's going number 1 next year? Trevor Lawrence went this year. Who you project?
I'm going to go with a quarterback not in the SEC or Big Ten. Currently a redshirt freshman, who'll be a redshirt sophomore after next season, Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma. I also have him winning the Heisman.
Wow. So maybe Oklahoma should change their name to Heisman U. So what is it about him that you think so high and make you think so highly of him?
His play. His play started off shaky as a redshirt freshman. Oklahoma, I think, started off 2-2 to begin the season, but then they won every other game after that. And his play, he started to heat up. He came on. He's a natural thrower of the football. He can really spin it. I just think he has the physical gifts, and if he can mature mentally and emotionally going into next season, I really think that he has all of the talent to be the number 1 pick.
Okay.
He was part of a documentary as a high schooler where they shadowed a bunch of highly recruited quarterbacks. I think it was called QB1, and he did not come off looking anything close to mature. He looked incredibly spoiled and privileged, and it was just a very, very bad look for him. So hopefully, he's matured a lot since, being a 17, 18-year-old or whatever. But
all right, well, give me your top picks in the SEC and in the Big Ten for next year. I know it's early, and if you're right, you probably win $1 million.
Yeah, I don't really have any top picks in the SEC. There's always going to be quarterbacks. I mean, everything I've looked into has been quarterback related as it pertains to 2022. And SEC does have a couple of those. Matt Corral from Mississippi by way of California. The Old Miss Rebels quarterback is projected to be a top 20 pick next year. And JT Daniels can always be a first rounder from Georgia.
Okay.
He kind of turned their season around when he stepped in there.
Well, Ohio State always has lots of draft picks. Anyone from Ohio State that you know of? Or is it too early?
Too early to say.
Okay. All right. JJ, we tried to get this in a 30-minute time period. We're pretty good. Is there anything you want to say before we close?
I got nothing to say except go White Sox, I guess.
Go White Sox. Hey, okay. Thanks for listening to us, everybody, on this draft thing. We'll be back with you in the near future, do a lot of things. The NBA is right around the corner, their draft, their season as well. And college baseball, World Series is not that far away. So you'll be hearing from us again. Take care. Peace. We out.
Bye.